Hey, my name is Luis and welcome to this very first video where I am going to explain a little bit about RA4 printing. RA4 is basically the process that you use in order to make prints from C41 color negative film. This is not going to be a very in-depth explanation of the process. This is not really going to be like a very detailed explanation on how to do it, but I'm gonna talk about a little bit about some of the experiences that I've had with the process and some of the things that I consider important before you start. For me, the first thing and the thing that I consider like the most important is the paper. When it comes to paper, you have three different brands where you can get your paper from. You can have paper from Fuji, you can have paper from Kodak, and from Mitsubishi. The paper that I've been using for the last 5 to 6 months has been Mitsubishi, and I have been very happy with the results. The problem that I've been dealing with Mitsubishi paper is that it comes in rolls. You have to consider that in certain circumstances, the paper that you're going to find is only available in rolls. It is not going to be available in individual sheets. So if you don't really want to deal with the inconvenience of cutting paper in a completely dark room, you can consider getting paper that is already cut in different sheets. So that for me is very important. If you cannot find like any paper at all that comes in sheets, I don't think getting rolls is a bad idea, but you have to find a way to safely cut that paper in a way that is safe not only for you, but also to make sure that you will not fog the paper. I am aware that there are certain filters that you can use in order to work with RA4 paper in a dark room, but I've never used them. If I recall correctly, the Graden 13 filter is a filter that was designed for color processes, but the problem with RA4 paper is that it is extremely sensitive to light. The next thing that I consider super important when it comes to RA4 darkroom printing is the chemistry. It is not very likely that you will find small bottles of RA4 developer and RA4 Blakes. It is very likely that you're going to find like at minimum like 1 gallon of chemistry. And I know that even with the paper and with the chemicals, the initial investment can get a little bit expensive. So I would suggest if you have a friend who is also into darkroom printing, to find a way to split the cost. It could be a cheaper option, and maybe you're not going to waste the huge amount of paper and chemistry that you might waste if you keep the chemicals and the paper for a very long time. You know, photochemical processes have the issue that after some time the chemistry can stop working and the paper is eventually going to get some sort of base fog, which is something that I have to deal with occasionally when I work with paper that has been expired. Back in June, I had to deal with Fuji Crystal Archive that was expired in 2013, and that paper had a pinkish base fog. So that is something also very important to consider as well if you're planning to do RA4 printing at home. Another thing that I consider important when it comes to RA4 is the way you're going to develop your paper. I know that some people do that with open trays, and I know that some people do it just as they do with black and white, but the issue for me is that I have certain safety concerns with the RA4 chemistry, and I wouldn't really like to be around those chemicals for a very long amount of time, and I don't think it is safe. I don't like the idea of working with RA4 paper in a place that is completely dark. I just pretty much want to avoid any accidents from happening. So I personally use something that has been very useful for me, and it is the Unicolor Unidrum. these Unicolor Unidrums were, at least the ones that I have been using, were from the late 70s, and they have been amazing for me. They have been very useful, and they let me develop the paper outside with light once I expose the paper and once I place it inside the tank in my darkroom. So after I go outside, I can have access to the chemistry, and I have access to the resources that I'm going to use in order to develop the paper without worrying that I might have an accident. So these tools are incredibly useful. You not only have access to Unicolor Unidrums, you have options from many other brands such as Jobo, maybe even Bestseller has. Now that I mentioned Unicolor, I want to talk about another tool that was inside the Unicolor printing kit that I purchased in December, and it is the Unicolor Duocube. This Unicolor Duocube is a very simple device. It comes with gels of different colors, and it basically helps you to find the correct filtration for your print. Well, this is something that you have to calibrate. This is not something that it is as straightforward. The way this works is that basically you're going to place the Unicolor Duocube above the RA4 paper, and then you're going to use a diffuser under the lens, and then you're going to expose 4 different test strips. Then when you do that, you're going to notice that you're going to get like very specific patches of color. And when you use the Unicolor guide that comes with this, you're going to see what are some of the filtrations that you might need to use in order to have a more properly calibrated print. And the goal is basically to reach what we could call neutral gray. Now that I also mentioned neutral gray, I've been using another tool that I think it is also very useful if you want to do color darkroom prints, and it is a color analyzer. The model that I have been using is made by Bestseller, and it's been a very good device. It's taken me longer to understand how to use it, but it's been very interesting because once you get the idea of how it works, you're going to be able to print more pictures faster. So if you don't really want to spend a huge amount of time doing test strips, if you don't really want to invest that amount of time spending like not only chemistry but also paper doing test strips in order to get to a filtration that works for you, a color analyzer is a very useful tool that you might have the possibility to get at a very low price on eBay. Now, the final thing to consider when it comes to RA4 is temperature. And I think the problem with temperature is that if you don't really have control over that, you are going to deal with certain casts, and you're going to deal with certain issues that shouldn't actually be there. I was doing RA4 at room temperature. Here where I live, I have like a very warm weather, so I thought it was a good idea to make prints with, with the temperature available at the moment. But the problem is that maybe one weekend I had like this very rad print that I really liked, and I basically worked maybe 2 hours to get that print right, and maybe the next week I wanted to do like the same print, maybe to give it to a friend or something like that, and I was finding out that everything looked off, that there was something weird going on. And after some time and after some research trying to find out what was going on, I noticed that my issue was the temperature. One weekend the temperature was warmer, and then the next weekend the temperatures tended to go like a bit lower, so it really ended up affecting the final result that I was getting. So I think temperature is important because it is a variable that will affect your final result, and if you don't really have access to a processor that could be able to maintain the temperature of the development process of the paper, what I have been using is a sous vide, which is the same device that I have been using for C41 film development. So what I do is pretty much the same. I put the bottles inside a tank at 39 degrees, and what I do is that I develop just as normal once the chemicals reach the temperature that they should have. So these are basically some of the things that I have had to deal with when it comes to A4 paper development. I think it is a process that it is very enjoyable. It is something very cool to do, and the results that you get compared to an inkjet print are completely different. I know it can take a lot of time. I know it can take months in order to get there, you know, to finally get a very decent print, but it really teaches you how color theory works. And even for me, it's been very important to learn how to scan and how to find the correct balance of color, not only in prints, but also when I'm working with scanned images and even with digital images. So I think A4 is a process that if you do it with a lot of patience, if you do it with a lot of care, you're going to be very happy with the results, and you're going to enjoy the prints that you're going to get from your film images. I know that scanning film is very convenient, especially if you want to share your images to the world online. And you know, we have this powerful tool called the internet that lets you show all the qualities of your different film stocks with the community around the world. But if you want to have your images on paper, I think A4 and also black and white darkroom printing is an amazing thing to do. It is a great experience, and after all, I mean, I also work with a hybrid workflow. I not only do like A4 printing, I do like I really enjoy doing inkjet printing. I've been doing this for a few months, and even though most of the time I work with a hybrid workflow, I think it is very nice to be able to print your film images onto photosensitive paper. I think it is important to keep doing darkroom prints. I think it is a process that it is completely worth it, and at least for me, it teaches me a very big lesson. And it is not only patience, but also in a technical sense, it helps me to evaluate images in a more technical way. I can see color casts more easily, and I can evaluate the conditions of certain film stocks in an easier way. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was useful for you, and I hope I make more videos in the future. See you soon.